the live recording of Play Guitar Podcast, episode 128. We're going to be talking about getting stuck in a guitar rut today, getting things set up. We always do these at Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. How we do them is I usually check the chat a little bit, say hi to everybody that's here. And then we do the podcast, and throughout the podcast, we stop and check the chat a little bit. So if you have any questions or anything that you'd like to bring up, feel free to do so. Okay, so here we are in the chat. Coke was here first. First, man. How you doing? Kevin's here. Good to see you, Kevin. Let's see. Evan is here. Wonderful, man. Evan and Chris both here. Brennan and Josh is here too. Evan said hi to Josh before he even showed up. He knew he'd be here today. Awesome. So we're talking about getting stuck in a rut today. And this is something that's been on my mind since last weekend. A few things with the coaching students kind of resonated with me, and this kind of just came out. And we've been doing kind of pulling our ideas on the weekends. If you're new here, we get together every Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday live, all at 4. And we have different things we do each day. That's kind of evolving into some really cool things. But what we're going to do today was I called an audible today. I just said, this is it's on my mind. I feel like there's somebody out there who could really benefit from this. So we're going to be talking about getting stuck in rut. It's something I talk about a good bit, but I never really focused on it. And the problem with a lot of guitar players is it's all about fun. It's all about feeling, and that's how it should be. That's wonderful. But sometimes you don't think a whole lot about where you are and what's the best path forward. And so that's where we're going today. We're going to, the first section, I'm going to, basically for beginners, intermediates, and advanced, we're going to talk about all the different problems that they may be having. And a lot of times, and this resonates with me as well, because a lot of times I didn't realize I was stuck. I thought I was working on something that was really, going to help me a lot, and didn't realize I didn't have the skills to be working on that, and just kept beating my head against the wall trying to get something going there, and just had a hard time. So what we're going to do, Evan says, "Hey, Lee's here." So what we're going to do is get started in a few minutes. I'll start the music in a few minutes. I'm just going to hit the chat one more time before we get into part one. So Brendan says, "Don't forget to hit the like button." Thank you, man. That's important. And you can actually even subscribe and all that cool stuff if you'd like to. Sure would help. Okay, we're reconnected. That's good. Not sure why that happened, but we're going to move forward anyway. Okay, got my notes. 3, 2, 1. Can't make any progress and you're losing interest? Are you putting in more effort and getting less results? Join me today as I show my proven path to getting out of the mud and back on the road to success with the guitar. So stay tuned. Hello and welcome, friends, to episode 128 of the Play Guitar Podcast. I'm Lee, and this is the podcast that's determined to make you a better guitar player. No matter if you're just starting out or you've been playing for years, this is the show that will help you become the guitarist that you always wanted to be. How's your guitar playing going? This is a question I ask a lot, very often. And it's never an answer that comes back to me quickly. It's a question that people are kind of taken aback about. I get a lot of puzzled faces when I say, how's your guitar playing going? We don't normally think about these things. It's kind of an underneath the surface. Guitar is usually all about how you feel. And then you struggle to put into words actually how you feel about your guitar playing. And when I get those responses, it's very rarely a positive answer. And that's understandable when you're on a journey. We call this a guitar journey. And it has tons of ups and downs and pitfalls. And the pitfalls, that's what I'm focusing on today. Have you ever been in a rut on the guitar before? Do you think you might be in one now? Well, you may be in one right now, and you haven't even really thought about it. When things are going good, when you're seeing improvement, it's easy. You're on a roll. It's exciting. There's a lot of cool things that are going on. So it's the emotions and what you're doing are connected. You're feeling it. But with anything that takes time and takes patience to master, anything that you need to master, like the guitar, it's not easy to distinguish whether you're still on course or you're stuck in a rut. So in this first part, I'm going to talk about the common ruts that beginners, intermediates, and advanced guitar players fall into. And if these things sound familiar to you, you might be in need of a different approach to the guitar. Okay, so before we get into one, we're going to check the chat, make sure everything's going good, make sure everybody can hear me well. Let's see here. Coke says, I suppose this topic is one I've been slogging away at personally for a year. Right. David's here. Coke's here. Evan says, I feel like I'm no longer in a rut thanks to the Academy. That's good news, man. Good news. And Coke calls them temporary plateaus. Right. The guy had a whole podcast on guitar plateaus, which was fun. I enjoyed doing that one too. And Chris says, I'm finding the arpeggios quite tough, but that means that I'm learning stuff too. Okay, so for somebody in the chat could just let me know if everything's coming through fine. Evan says, recording is too much fun. I need to make sure I'm making time to practice as well. Yes. Oh, JD, thanks, JD. Says the sound good. Okay, great. All right, so I'm going to head on back to topic one. And this isn't going to be a real long one today. This is there's some easy fixes to this, and I have a good idea for it as well. So I'm not gonna. It's not going to be one of these hour-long, 45-minute long podcasts. We're going to get right to it on this one. So, okay, part one: why you're not seeing improvement on the guitar. If you feel you're not moving forward on guitar and it's not going the way you would like it to go, there are several very common reasons why this is probably happening. Unfortunately, with the guitar, it's not always obvious what the problems are and what's holding you back. So we're going to take a look at the problems for the three main types of players: for beginners, intermediates, and advanced. But when we do this, we're going to pinpoint what the problems are, and then we're going to get started doing something about it. So we're not just sitting around wondering what's going on and we're spinning our wheels, which it happens to so often. So let's start with beginners and work our way through. The number one problem I see in beginners, the person who has who's stuck in a rut the most, it's the self-teacher. It's the person who comes into this, I'm going to do this myself no matter what. And we call it the Ala Carte Method. We've talked about that a ton on the podcast. And it's generally the thinking it is that all you need to do is just, I'm going to go on YouTube, I'm going to pick things that I like to do, and I'm going to do them, and that'll be good enough. It's fast, and it's free, and it looks like it's a lot of fun. And I'm sure it is in the beginning. I use YouTube all the time. The problem is, the problem starts quickly after you go down that road. You find out it doesn't really work that way. There's a disconnect about the way it looks and how things actually happens. You've got all this free instruction, and you can copy a few things that you've seen, but you're still in the dark. And then at some point you work at it, and you get stopped in your tracks. And that's where the fun of guitar starts to diminish. The second beginner that we see a lot is the beginner that hits the wall early. All guitar players can hit the wall, but that early problem. It's new students. They've decided that they're going to learn a certain technique, and they're going to put everything that they have into it, which is great. They mean well, and they're dedicated to figuring this thing out. And that's a good way to be. Like, I'm going to do this thing. I've seen people do this. If they can do it, I can do it. It's a great way to think. The problem is where you're starting, and days working on something can turn into weeks. And then weeks of working on something turn into months, and months can even go to years. And I was talking about this before we started the show, beating your head against the wall, trying to brute force this free instruction into your guitar playing, and just getting stopped. And this is one of the times where you are sure that you're stuck in the mud. It's not that you may not be thinking that. You're sure about it. And usually this situation doesn't end well. A lot of people will quit guitar once they hit that wall a little too early. And then the third beginner or early guitar player that I see a lot of common problems from is the too slow for you player. The new player that's frustrated by how slow it takes to get good at the guitar. They expect to be able to start impressing their friends in a really short time. And so when they start to feel this frustration, they want to speed it up. They want to get those results quickly and try to find a way of getting those results quickly without putting in the hard work that goes into it. And this, as well as the last one, is not a bad way to be. There's a lot of adrenaline in this. There's a lot of initiative involved. It's awesome. But unfortunately, with the guitar, there's a really narrow path ahead to get better. And so this player here, the too slow for you player, ends up being frustrated early on as well. Okay, let's move to the intermediate player. And this is, I'm guessing, but I think from the feedback I've got, there's a lot of intermediate players that listen to the podcast. And this should be helpful to really pinpoint where we're at. The first problem I find in intermediate players is the knowledge overwhelm. When you ask somebody if they can play something, can you do this? Can you do that? The answer is always yes. Yeah, I can do that. I know this, and I know that. But I want to move on. I want to move on to modes, or I want to move on to advanced stuff in my lead playing. And this is very similar to GAS, to gear acquisition syndrome. It's a routine of acquiring knowledge quickly, free content. It's like the Matrix, downloading. I want to download how to kung fu, trying to figure out how to do some really cool things with only a small look at it, with a small look at each skill. It's like collecting gear. You're collecting pieces of knowledge, but you're not making them your own. And that's not the fault of the player. It's kind of, that's how a lot of things are presented. You know, you can do this quick. It's easy. 90% of the songs that you learn, if you're going to use scales, if you're going to do guitar leads or, you know, any of those things, they use the big four scales, right? They use the major, the minor, major pentatonic, and minor pentatonic. And if you ask an intermediate player, and not the guys that are here right now, but if you ask an intermediate player, most of the time, like, oh yeah, I know those. And they may know, usually it's two places on the guitar where they can do that. For each of them. Just because you know the major scales or the pentatonic scales doesn't mean that you can use them effectively. And as coming from a lead guitar player for modern music, they are your bread and butter. That's what you need to use these and get familiar with these and have them become part of you. It's an important thing. It needs to be a continual part of your practice. You don't just leave the heart of your playing. Pay attention to it once and then put it on the shelf and then expect that you're going to progress. You get a lot of that. If I could do this, if I could just do this, I'd be happy. Well, okay, you can do it. Now what? Are you really a better player because you can just play a little part of something or you can mimic something? And if that's all you want, more power to you. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. If it would just be so much fun for you to be able to play something just like somebody else does, that's great. I'm happy for you. But to me, that's not what I find special about being a musician. And with a little extra work, you could have that too. There's tons of players that can play a harmonic minor scale. They've learned it. But they aren't what you would consider a great guitar player, because learning that scale pattern is not enough. You have to spend time with them. And here's something that Chris sent me some ideas when we were talking about this topic, and he says it is sometimes too easy to wing it, and maybe we assume the foundations will take care of themselves, and if we learn the harder stuff, we assume if we go for this, it's going to fill in all of the cracks. So if we go for a really advanced thing, if I can do that, then all this other stuff will take care of itself, which is a really it's something that I hadn't put into words, but it's something that I had thought before. So Chris did a really good job of putting that into words. And it causes more frustration as you pile on more advanced knowledge on top of a weak foundation. Everything we do here is building up a foundation so you can be a player, so you can be a musician, not a copier. And so that's where we're going with that. So that's number one for the intermediate players. But there's another type of intermediate player that gets stuck in a rut. And this relates back to the last one, but the player that avoids what actually helps. Think about that for a minute. There's a really wonderful business influencer, someone I've met before at a podcast convention. Her name is Jericia Hawk, and she's a friend, and I keep up with her. And I think it was on Instagram, and she had a quote, and it says, "Are you really wanting to succeed, or underneath it all, are you holding yourself back?" And that hit me hard, because not only have I seen it in my own playing, I've seen it in tons of students. I've thought that. I've thought, are they really wanting to do this? Because they're avoiding something. They're avoiding those things that are going to get you there. It's a fear thing, you know? So I wrote down some things where that would apply to the guitar, and is jamming over the same chord progression, using the same pattern all the time. Is that really helping you? Are you prepared to do the things that may not be so much fun? Are you frustrated that you aren't getting better, but you play all the time? You know, it could be that you're avoiding the very things that will get you what you want. I've done it before. I think most of us have done it before. And why is that? It could be, if you really look at it, if you really go deep, it could be the fear of success. What would that mean? Where's this all going to lead if I get really good at guitar? And the one thing, the most feared thing in all of music is, I got to play in front of people, right? So your brain is doing a lot more than what's on the surface all the time. It's figuring things out ahead of time. It's very powerful, the subconscious. And it's the fear of success. Playing in front of people is very scary. It could be subliminal, you know? It's the, you may not really want to reach your goal, even though you want it, having some conflicting thoughts. Busting through those is what we're going to talk about today. So the last intermediate problem I've seen is the student who thinks this is all too much work. It's too much effort. I started playing. I was having a lot of fun playing the guitar. It was keeping me interested all the time. I was learning new things. I was seeing improvement. But then things started to slow down. And then the big realization happened is that the amount of time that you're putting in versus the amount of progress that you're getting is upside down from where it was before. You start thinking, I should be better. Maybe this just isn't for me. Maybe it's not going to work out for me. There's no more adrenaline. The adrenaline rush it's over. You may not be in a band where you wanted to be in a band, or maybe if you made it to being a band, you're playing out, or you're a performer, it's not what you really thought it was all going to be. You know, there's a lot of other stuff to it that you may or may not like. You know, all of your effort hasn't paid off, so you might be ready to call it, throw in the towel. You know, so those are my three intermediate situations that I see. And then the last one, we're going to talk about advanced. And there's a few for this, but the big one for an advanced player is they get set in their ways. You got along to a certain point, and you had some success, and then you just coasted. You just kept at it. You're just doing what you did. You put in the work ahead of time. Now you're just reaping the rewards of what you did ahead of time. And you forgot what really improving feels like. You just want to stay in the good part, right? You want to stay where everything's fun, but not have to do what you did before, not have to do all the work. You're off the journey, right? You're not continually getting better anymore. Some advanced players, they lose the will to do it. They lose the will to experiment with their playing. They're just keeping on. They keep on trucking, and it's okay. And it's easy because you've done some things, and you're at a good place, and you're getting by with minimal effort at that point. You're stuck in a rut, and it's not the same rut as a beginner player plays, but you're limiting how far you could go. How much farther could you go, an advanced player, if you were practicing? If you weren't just coasting, right? Some of them, the other one, it's really, they're both the same. The last two is the player that has lost the thrill of learning music. Some advanced players think, well, I got it all figured out. I know what this is. I know what music is. It's this. And you put it into a little box right there. And that's music right there. I know music. I do music, and this is what I do. It's music's bigger than that. Music's bigger than what you focused on. There's more to it than that. There's infinite amount of places that you can go with music. And some of these people who lost the thrill of learning music, they've moved on to different things. They might say, "Oh, I can do this." It's not holding my attention anymore. That's a rut, right? There's more. There's definitely more that you can do. And finding that joy that you had before. We always talk about how when you're starting, it doesn't feel like you're putting in this time, doesn't feel like you're going anywhere. And then somebody says, "Man, that sounds good." Boom, right? I'm better now, right? And then you play out and you get paid. Boom, there you go. You're up to the next level, you know. And that being that feeling of going over it, practicing, have a routine, sounding bad at something, and then working at it until it sounds good, and then getting some feedback from it. You know, that's the best to me. That's what it's all about to me. Okay, so that is the end of part 1. I'm going to go head over to the chat again and see what we got going on here. Go back a little bit. Everything sounds good, looks fine. Thanks, guys. Appreciate that. And Coke says, "That's exactly what's at the front of my mind, Chris. Feels like chopped up scale pattern that I'm using for..." Oh, he's talking about arpeggios. Okay, so they're talking about arpeggios a little bit. Let's see. And then we're talking about pentatonics. David says, "I've not hit a rut yet. Just frustrations. Still having too much fun and was lucky and found this place." That's great, man. That's awesome. Hopefully all the ruts that I've been in and we've all been in, we can help you stay away from them and just keep having fun with the guitar. Just knowing where your expectations are, you know, that keeping them right where they're right, keeping the prize not out there, but right in front of you is important. Evan says, "I feel like a better player when I'm coming up with cool stuff on my own." Yeah, that's true. When you find when you surprise yourself, that's a really good feeling. And then Brennan says, "It's taken me a long time to realize that you can't really skip steps with learning guitar." And that's why I'm doing this, because this is really why I'm doing it is when I was teaching group lessons, I was surprised at all the problems I was fixing, because I thought, well, you know, I'm a guitar teacher and it's all free out there. You know, why would anybody want a guitar teacher? And it come to find out over and over again, everybody tried to learn on YouTube. And there's a large percentage of people that the way that it's set up is not working. And it's skipping steps is what it is. Exactly what Brennan said. It's skipping steps. You gotta, you know, you gotta walk, right, before you run. Joe's here. Hey, Joe. Good to see you, man. Glad you're here. Okay, so let's go in. Let's start part 2. Okay, part 2, the guitar assessment for stuck in a rut guitar players. Most likely, if you're watching this or listening to this, most likely if you're listening to this, you're on your own. You're setting your own course. You're trying to learn this thing and you're setting your own course, and that's okay. There's a problem with that, though. The problem is it's not so easy to do when you don't have a good idea where you've been and where you need to go. You're going to waste a lot of time. And there's ways that you can do this. We don't think about this much. It's much easier to focus on playing, I don't know, a few new songs. It's easier to do the fun stuff than it is to look in the mirror and see where you're really at and what people hear when they listen to your playing. That's not so much fun. Let's take a good look in the mirror today, and we're going to take a self-guitar assessment. It's not difficult to do. It's very easy. There's only 3 parts, and it works no matter if you started yesterday or if you've been playing as long as I've been playing. It's for everybody. So we're going to do a little assessment. What's the most important part of the assessment is that you write it down. It's the most important part. You take a minute. I mean, it could be on the computer or on a piece of paper. You could print it out from the computer, but you write this down. That's the most important part. You need something you can see in the future when you come to these places where you're unsure of how you're doing or where you're going, the road ahead. So there's 3 parts to this assessment, and this I get from helping people with this. These are things that I think when I watch somebody. So I'm thinking, how can I help somebody who's in this situation who doesn't have the means to have someone help them out there? How can we get people back happy with the guitar again? Step 1, your history. Write down your history with the guitar. The guys here know, here in the chat, know when we start coaching, one of the first things I ask you is, give me a little history about your guitar playing. It's important, where you've come from. Okay? When you start anything, when you can remember why you wanted to play in the first place, it's very important. We get away from that a lot. Remind yourself why you wanted to do this in the first place. That's the first part of history. And then we want to write down our skill path. Okay? Where did you start? What did you start learning first? And then what came after that? And what came after that? And it can be general. You don't have to be specific about that. It could be like, I have written down here, I started learning chords, and then I jumped right into songs because I wanted to use those chords with songs. But then I had to backtrack. I realized I needed to, so I worked on rhythms and strumming patterns after that. And eventually I tried a few scales. I mean, it could be something as simple as that. It does not have to be detailed. Okay? Just something where you can see started from here, went to here, went to here. How did you build the foundation of your playing that you're currently standing on to date? Okay? That's part 1. Not difficult. Very easy to do. Do it in a minute, 2 minutes. But very important to see that, to have it in front of you. Let's talk about the second part of a self-assessment. We need to be critical. We need to see what's going on, to take a look. We need to listen to our playing. And what does that involve? That involves recording yourself. Scary, right? Do you remember the first time you heard your voice recorded? And it didn't sound the way it sounds in your head, right? Do you remember that feeling, that uneasy feeling? Oh, is that what I sound like? That's not what I feel like I sound like. What we feel like and what we actually sound like are totally different, 2 totally different things. So I want you to record your playing. Record a few songs that you like. If you're a lead guitar player, record you playing several different leads and different styles that you like to play. Play something that is your own and play some cover songs. Record yourself. Video if you can. That will just give you more information. Okay? So take an afternoon, take an hour, and put your phone there, press record, and just play. Just record your practice session. That'd be great. Okay? And this is where we stop. Once you've recorded that, I don't want you to look at it for a day or 2. I want you to put it away. I want you to have fresh ears and fresh eyes when you look back at it. So give it a few days. forget about it, go on about your life. And then the day or two when you come and you sit down at your practice space and you're ready to start practicing again, put your assessment page out and press play. And write down 2 columns. Real simple. What'd you like and what didn't you like about your own playing? And top of memory, just top of your head, just as you're playing it, go, oh, okay, there's that. I know one time I did this and I was really surprised at my chord playing. I was pressing, this was in my 20s, I think. I was already playing in bands, and when I listened back to myself playing, my chords sounded out of tune. I didn't understand why my chords were sounding out of tune. I was using a guitar with very high frets, and I was pressing down extremely hard on those, and it was pushing the chord notes out of tune. And I didn't catch it. And I'm sure other people who were listening to my playing did. I don't know how long I had been doing it. Probably since I had that guitar with the higher frets. I was still playing like I was using heavy strings with lower frets. And I didn't catch it. It just didn't occur to me. I didn't hear it. I wasn't listening for it. And I was very surprised about that. And immediately went to do something about it. Okay? And I was better for that. Just for listening, So we have the 2 columns: what you like, what you didn't like. And when you go through that, you got a snapshot of where you are as a player right now, from your own point of view, and you're going to be able to see the holes in your foundation. You can't get angry at yourself. Or I guess you could, but you shouldn't get angry at yourself for your opinions about your own playing. Right? There's no agenda, like with somebody else might say some stuff about your playing. This is from you, and you're being objective. You've given yourself some time. You can see where the holes in your foundation might be. Then you look at what you've got. You read, especially the negative part, what you didn't like about your playing. And if you can look back at your history, part 1 that we did. You look back at your history and then try and find the holes in your history with the parts of your playing that you think you need to work on. You're on the path, right? That's it. That's the best. That's the best information that you can get, and you don't have to feel bad about it. You don't have to feel wonder if somebody's trying to insult you or anything like that. It's coming from you. Okay? That's where you stand at this point. And that is important knowledge. And these 2 parts are very, very easy. Your history and being critical. Then part 3, putting it all together, and you've got exactly where you want to go. Okay, so I'm going to take a break now before we go into part 3 of the podcast. Okay, so let's see here. Let's go back here. Because I remember Joe came in between the sections. So there we are. Joe said hi. Evan never went the YouTube learning route. Learned 2 songs for YouTube after I was back into learning already. Yeah, I like YouTube for learning some stuff quickly. If I don't use it a whole lot, but say I've got a student who wants to learn a song and I don't have a whole lot of time. Well, somebody's done that work and it's out there for free. I'll grab that. It's a time saver. But I came before the whole YouTube thing, so I have a little bit of a different viewpoint towards it. I can see the good things and the bad things. Coke says, I'm guilty of all this, but it's from necessity. Day I can afford lessons, the day I start taking them. And this isn't even, about taking lessons. In fact, I'm trying to find ways for guitar players who are in that situation, who don't have someone that can say, oh, in 2 seconds, oh, you need to work on that. I'm trying to find ways that someone who's on their own, who's very who's not successful with YouTube, who can restart, and at least get a little bit of enlightenment about their own playing and what they need to work on. He says, I think it's good for learning only if you approach it from a teacher's mindset. So he's certified TGSL and a BA in applied linguistics, and learned to learn in college and to teach. And he's been applying that to guitar from necessity. That's great. Maybe we should say it's not for everyone then. Maybe a difficult road. Well, there are some people who can't sit still. It's definitely there's a few things about guitar that you need to be able to sit still for a little bit. That reminds me of when I have people who have kids who are like 3 and 4 and 5, and they wanted to take the group lessons, and they asked, well, how young do they have to be? And I usually say, well, 6 is usually where we'll start, but if they can sit still for more than 30 minutes, then that'd be a good place to start to. So there's something about guitar, you need to be able to focus. Some people can't focus, and that's just them. That's okay. This may not be for them. But I haven't seen many people who, if they really put their mind to this and they're really interested in doing it, that they can't get some sort of a success and some sort of moving forward. And I've dealt with some people who've dealt with some serious challenges, and we've been successful with that. So Josh says the structure is great. I don't feel like I'm driving somewhere with no directions. Right. And Coke says it's extremely difficult, and I highly always recommend a teacher to my friends. Yeah, it's not. It's the guitar's not easy. It's not easy. Even for people who make it look easy, it hasn't been easy for them. And Evan says, geez, I'm planning on recording vocals. That's going to be scary. Yeah. Well, just take one step at a time. And the cool thing about recording is you don't have to let anybody else hear it until you're happy with it. And Coke, thank you, Coke. That's very nice of you to say. I appreciate that. Joe says, actually, I've learned quite a bit from YouTube. Yeah, there is a video for everything that you might want to learn there. And that I have no problem with YouTube, and there's there's great stuff on YouTube, and there's stuff that's just wrong on YouTube too. So it's all over the map. It's all there. Anything that you want is there. I have no problem. I like YouTube a lot. But the problem isn't the what's on there. It's the way that people consume it and the results that they get from it. So you can learn a ton of, so you can learn everything. I could put everything that I teach out on YouTube, and I put most of it, because that's what I did anyway. If anybody asked me a question when we're playing guitar, if I was at a show and I did something and they asked me, what'd you do there? I'd have fun sitting there talking about it. And it's awesome. I love sharing this stuff. So let's see here. Let me go down a little bit. Joe said, gosh, I miss it. From basic chords to guitar and music theory. Yeah, the problem is it's it's the order of things, and it's if you haven't if you haven't got stuck yet, it's very common. I mean, it's for some people are wired for YouTube, where, hey, I'll take a little bit of this, and mix it all together, and it works for them. But I haven't seen that be. I've seen the other side of that a lot. Is what I'll say. Okay, so there's a lot more chat. I'm gonna go ahead, but I want to go ahead and finish this out. So I'll come back to the chat when I get through the last section. Okay, so part 3. We've got our assessment now. Now we're going to put what we know into practice. So now you've taken your assessment. You've got some very important information. And we're going to use that to start moving forward. And we're going to start small. We're going to start with this week, today, and 7 days into the future. We're going to chart out what we're going to practice this week. If you know that you need to work on something, but you don't know what it is, you don't know what to do with it, the first day, or even the first few days, set those days aside for research. Look up the skill that you need to work on. Find some content that's out there. It's out there. Or find someone who has knowledge about this. Ask for some help. Ask someone who you know is a guitar player who's been through that before. Don't be afraid. Ask for help. You can always ask me. You can email me all the time. If you don't have my email, it's lee@playguitaracademy.com. I'm always happy to help point somebody in the right direction. But as you're going to plan out the 7 days, and once you've figured out things you need to work on, I also want you to round it out a little bit. I want you to take this saying and take it to heart. Just being able to play something doesn't mean you're playing it well. Remember that. A lot of people are blowing past the things that are going to make them the gold. They get a little bit of the gold and take off, right? They're blowing past the important stuff. So I love to split practice sessions into 2. This part and that part. 1 and 2, right? Binary. It's easy to wrap your head around. Okay, I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this, then I'm done. Okay, so I'd like for you to make a list of the chords, the scales, the rhythms, and the songs that you already play. A general list. And when we set up our practice times, we're going to split them into 2. Half of your time with what we found in the assessment. That's what? The practice part. And then the other half, we're going to refine what we've already learned. That's the play section. We're going to take scales that we know, and we're going to run them, put them into different situations. We're going to take the chords that we know, take the songs that we know, and work them, and come up with new ways to play them, new different ways of looking at them, spending time, not leaving the things that we've learned in the past, but keeping them up. If you make this a routine, it's going to guarantee that you're headed towards a solid player, being a very solid player. This is going to keep us out of the guitar rut, and you're going to bypass all of those frustrations. And you're not going to second guess the commitment to playing guitar. Now, normally what I would do is I would have a sheet for you. I still may do this, but right now, when I was coming up with content for this week, I wanted it to be simple, something that you could just do on a notepad. something that would help you that we didn't have a lot, but I don't know. You could check the show notes. I may have one if people be interested in having an assessment sheet worked up. May do that anyway. But that's it, man. We're moving forward. I'm so happy that you've stayed this long on the podcast and on the video and the people there and are getting something from this. And you don't have to be frustrated with the guitar. You can be happy with the small things, but to do that, you have to know you're moving in the right direction. So that's the journey. That's what we're working on. So no more getting stuck in the mud with this. And so I'm going to mention something that has helped a lot of people get out of the mud with their lead guitar playing is taking a few steps back. And I have a course. It's free blues lesson. It's playguitaracademy.com/free blues lesson. It's my 6 steps to getting out of just the standard blues playing that most people find themselves in and making their blues playing better. And so I'll have a link to that in the show notes today. A lot of people have taken the course, and it's I did it a while ago, and I've looked back through it, and the the video quality is different than what I do now, but the content is really, really, really good and really, really solid, and it's free for you over at playguitaracademy.com/free blues lesson. And I'm going to go ahead and call it today. That's a wrap. Thank you for joining me today for the Play Guitar Podcast. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast player. Also, I really appreciate a review for the show. If you're just starting out, you're new to the guitar, head on over to starthereguitar.com, and you can check out my premium 11 weeks beginner's course. That'll give you the foundations you need to move forward correctly on the guitar. Follow me on all my different social media pages. Links to them are playguitaracademy.com. Thanks again, and I'll see you on the next episode. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go back. I missed a bunch of chat here. Let me put my guitar down. It was sliding down while I was doing that. So let's hang out for a little bit. We got some time to hang out today. How far back did I go here? Okay, here we go. They're talking about singing and what a struggle that is. And Coke says, I think it's hard to find songs good for your voice when you don't really know how to sing with your own voice yet. At least for me, that's the biggest challenge. And key is something that most people, when they first start to sing, guitar players that start to sing, anyone who starts to sing, because a lot of guitar players, especially because a lot of guitar songs are in E and are in A, there's common guitar keys. And so everyone tries to sing those songs when they do covers in the key that the song was there for. And it'd be great if that could happen, because a lot of the guitar riffs they deal with the open strings, and they're meant, they sit better in those keys, G and E and A, guitar keys. But the problem is not everyone's voice is suited for the register that song is in every key. Once you start moving keys around, a lot of singers feel like they've hit the jackpot. Oh, are you saying that I can sing this song that I could never hit those notes before, just in a different key, and it fits my voice better? It doesn't sound like it. So have you ever heard someone do a cover of a song and it sounds low, but it fits? Maybe they have a low, smoky voice or something like that, and it sounds wonderful. And you might sit down on the guitar and try and figure out, like, that's not in the key that I know this song. Once singers realize that if you're going to be the singer and that your melody is the focus of the song, the other parts of the song need to support the melody. So if you're playing guitar, so many times I've done this when I've been in bands with different singers, and like female singers to male singers, the keys are always different, right? And so you might know a song in one key and you get used to it. Then it doesn't sound great. So what would you rather have? The singer sounding like they can't hit the notes or it's too low, but the guitar sounding great? Well, as a guitar player, you might think that, but that's not where you want to go. So keys for singing is very important. So for Evan, if you're writing a song and you're going to sing it, you're going to try to sing it. Be prepared to play that song in a few different keys and record them and see which one your voice sounds the best in. And it's very in half steps. You might sound terrible a half step too high, and then just a half step lower, bam, it perfectly fits your voice. So it's a marriage between the chords of the song and the melody. And if your vocals sit nicely, you hear a lot of famous singers, and they sing, and you just think, oh, they're great, they could sing anything. And ask that singer. They know there are certain things with their voice that they cannot sing, and they make sure that the songs that they play never do those things. So they always sound pro. So they always sound professional. So keys are extremely important, and would be a good thing to think about when you're first starting to get into singing and playing guitar, and songwriting too. Not being stubborn with the key. This song is in this key and it's just staying there. Well, if you're singing and your voice doesn't fit that key, switch it up. You'll be happy you did. At first, it'll be a pain on guitar to have to redo everything, but worth it. So let's see here. David says, all the information you need is online. Problem is to know when to learn it and how to implement it. Words today. If you struggle, the internet will not help. Yeah, that's what teaching is, and that's what takes so long with it. That's what makes it so difficult. So you'd think every person who wants to play guitar should be able to play guitar right now, since all of the information is up there for free. And that's not how it works. That's not what's happening. Coke says, my wife recorded my first only open mic and I sound like a dying cat, but I wouldn't trade the experience for anything. That's right, man. That's your first step. That's your first step. Second step will be better, right? You've got that. You know where you're sitting with that one. And then Chris said, record yourself and just listen to yourself. I did this yesterday to check which register sounded better when I was singing a song. It informed me so much better for it. That's right. You can only work with what you got, and you can and will get better. Bob Dylan can't sing that great, but that didn't hold him back. That's the guy who I saw Bob Dylan play it was at the University of Delaware basketball arena, and this was a long time ago. And Bob Dylan's band played, and I was so happy to get there, and it was great. It was great, but Bob Dylan there was singing the way that people make fun of him singing. It was up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down. And it was awesome. It was great. It was not what you would think would be a technically good singing, but it fit what worked. And that gave me a lot. That was right around the time. That's when I was up there, but I was living down here. And it was right about that time when I decided I'm going to sing. I had enough. And if he can do it, I can do it, right? When Evan says, when my mic gets here, I won't be able to help testing it out. So there's got to be some singing in my future. Yeah. Not expected to have a golden voice. You don't have to have a golden voice. You just need to sound like you and make it fit appropriately the key of your song. Yeah. And it'll be it's another journey. Kevin says, work disaster. So I missed the podcast at this point. Oh, man. Sorry about that. Coke says, I have to record my worst singing song and post it on a Facebook group to make you guys feel better. Or just post my dying cat open mic. That, man, you're fearless. You're fearless. Kevin said, YouTube had me spinning in directionless circles. Love that I'm finally starting on a set path with coaching. And that's what happens. And Joe says, I'm very careful what I look at or study on YouTube. Okay, that's good. Let's see here. Just lost my place. Where am I? Oh, goodness. Well, I'll just kind of go down towards the end because we're going to tie this up here. Let's see here. Steve's here. Hey, Steve. Good to see you. Coke says, I'd like my voice to be a lower register. That's just not the case. Maybe Bill Monroe-esque. Right. That's right. And Evan says, I'm not a bass or anything, but I'm pretty sure I'm not in the range of my favorite singers. Just get started. Just get started. It's going to be difficult at first, and you'll figure it out, man. You'll figure it out. Just key is it. So many people try to force their voice into keys that aren't suited for them, and that's the most important thing. And listening to yourself. Don't be afraid to record it. See how it sounds. You don't have to play it for anybody else. Listen to it. Is that the way you want? No. Do something about it. Change the key, right? Or if it's a technique thing, start using your voice more. Get used to doing that. I remember playing in a lot of small clubs, and people will play in small clubs without monitors. They couldn't hear themselves sing. And they would do little tricky things, like they'd take their main speakers and pull them back a little bit so you could hear just a little bit without the mic feeding back. And the problem was, and I did that for a little bit too, till I wised up. And problem with that is once you get the bass going, the drums going, and it gets loud, that goes away, you know. And listening to yourself back, you can't hear where you are. But at the same time, if it's an experienced singer who knows what it feels like, where those notes sit, then I guess they could do that. But it usually sounds pretty tough to listen to. Just make sure you're not dipping into a falsetto on accident. Yeah. Okay, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and call it. That was fun, man. That was a good one. This was one I think I don't know who it's for, but I just really feel like these are some words that somebody's gonna get some stuff out of today, and maybe they'll take my advice and write some things down and start mapping a way forward. All right, everybody, I'm gonna go ahead and go. Thanks for hanging out with me. I'm gonna thank Coke and Evan. Thanks for Steve for popping in. And Chris, as always, David, and Joe, and Kevin. And let's see here. Brandon was here too. I just want to take a quick look back, make sure I thank everybody for being here. JD was here. Told me I sound good. Thanks, JD. Thanks for hanging out. Dean was here. And I think that was everybody who's in the chat today. If I missed you, I apologize. But okay, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up. I'll talk to you in a little bit. I'll see you on Friday when we get a whole new week going on. Awesome. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.